One always asks the question, why are we at war, both Britain and the United States, against Afghanistan? Why?
We're not at war with Afghanistan. We are, however, at war with elements of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban on the basis that they are not only terrorists, but they are exporting that terrorism to the Western world, as we've seen on many occasions.
When did they export terrorism to the Western world?
Al-Qaeda has exported terrorism on numerous occasions, the USS Cole, the embassy bombs, 9/11, and all sorts of other attacks.
Wait, you say 9/11. 9/11, according to most people who have done a thorough investigation, is an inside job.
No, it's not.
You say no.
I worked for government for 21 years. I know what governments do, I know what governments don't do, and I've looked at both sides of this. I've looked at the conspiracy theories. I've looked at the 9/11 Commission report.
You're familiar with the law that allowed Adolf Hitler to become dictator of Germany, and the 9/11 law that resulted, the Homeland Security Act, is based very much on it, even word for word in some cases.
Well, I would disagree with that.
The Enabling Act.
I would disagree with that.
Okay. Can you tell me how a building could come down with simply the burning of jet fuel, which Jet A fuel burns at about 700 degrees, to melt steel? It's going to take 2,200. How could that defies logic?
This is one of the popular.
How is it?
This is one of the popular misconceptions of 9/11. For the building to collapse, you don't need the steel support structures to melt, which, as you say, does happen at a higher temperature than aviation fuel burns. What you do need is for the steel to lose its structural integrity, and that happens at a much lower temperature. So the physics and the engineering is not in
Well, it just
dispute.
defies logic, because we take a look at the explosions, and you see the explosions as they come down on the North Tower, the South Tower, and there is one other building called Building Number 7.
Yes.
It wasn't hit with an airplane.
No, debris hit it, it caught fire, and it collapsed.
But it came down in the same configuration as one would witness at an implosion.
Well, I've spoken to people who do controlled demolitions, and they've looked at some of the 9/11 conspiracy theories, and they've not been convinced.
They haven't been convinced. But Building Number 7 was being... We saw a woman on the BBC. She was talking on the BBC, and she says, Building Number 7 has come down. Behind the woman, in the background, we've got Building 7. It was up, and she was saying that it had already come down before it came down. How could that be unless the BBC was cooperating in line?
Well, I would find it a very bizarre conspiracy theory that would include in it the BBC.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing, and indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were, and it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York, behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center...
Building 7 is clearly visible right behind the reporter. It wasn't until 5:20 Eastern Time that it came down. Buildings 4, 5, and 6 maintained heavy damage from falling debris from the towers, and yet they remained standing. In Madrid, Spain, this building burned for nearly 24 hours, a raging inferno, and it didn't fall. Building 7 received minimal damage and suffered only a minor fire, and yet it collapsed.
Be that as it may, I think this was a very confused situation. A lot was going on. The building was clearly on fire and in danger of collapse. This is a woman who's got things coming in through her earpiece. People are telling her different pieces of information. I think it's a simple mistake. It's not, it's not a conspiracy.
How can it possibly be a mistake when she's saying that the building has collapsed? There was no danger of that building coming down, and it came down in and on itself like any normal implosive device. It was set. In fact, Larry Silverstein asked why he brought the building down. Or, it came down. He says, well, it was in danger, we had to do it. And to set up an implosion takes...
That's not my understanding of what he actually said. The phrase that's often used is, pull it.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Actually, what he was referring to was the firefighting team that was in the building, and what Larry Silverstein said was, too many people have died already on this day. I say we get the team out of there, pull it. I.e., pull the team out, not pull the building down.
According to FEMA's building performance study, firefighters were never in the building. Preliminary indications were that due to lack of water, no manual firefighting actions were taken by the fire department. And these statements, from Popular Mechanics and the New York Times, confirm that no firefighting took place in Building 7, and that the fire department had ordered firefighters away from the building at 11:30 a.m. Another problem is that Silverstein made no reference to the firefighters when he talked about Building 7 for the PBS documentary. Plus, after Silverstein stated that the decision was made to pull Building 7, he finished his sentence with these words.
And then we watched the building collapse.
This would indicate that the collapse of Building 7 was the direct result of the decision to pull it. As a successful property developer, Silverstein would have gained considerable experience in hiring contractors to carry out controlled demolition of buildings. It's reasonable to assume that he would be aware that the term pull is often used by demolition experts to refer to bringing a building down. For example, here's Ground Zero's post-disaster wrecking crew talking about preparing to demolish Building 6.
Hello? Oh, we're getting ready to pull Building 6.
When referring to Building 7, it was Silverstein who suggested that the smartest thing to do was to pull it.
I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it.
And because Silverstein has more knowledge of controlled demolition than he does of firefighting, it is reasonable to assume that he was referring to pulling the building down.
The former head of the FBI in Los Angeles and Dallas and Memphis, Ted Gunderson, and I were talking about the FBI coming back to the World Trade Center and doing it again. We talked about that on film in 1995, 6 years before the event. And when we talk about Al-Qaeda, it's Al-Qaeda, and we see that all of this is being orchestrated to bring about a world government.
Well, I don't see that happening at all.
You don't see it happening?
No.
Good evening, everybody. President Obama and British Prime Minister Gordon today calling for a new world order to tackle our global economic crisis.
I think a new world order is emerging, and with it the foundations of a new and progressive era of international cooperation.
We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
We have a lot of huge problems. We have the nuclear problem in Korea. We have the nuclear problem in Iran. We have, of course, the whole array of problems, each of which, Afghanistan, and so forth. But then we have the financial issues. But they really are issues of the construction of a new world order. That's what this is about.
I think we we'll have to agree to disagree on a lot of this, but I have a plane to catch now, so going to go, but happy to pick up these issues in more detail soon.
Maybe you could explain to me how steel can dissolve with Jet A fuel, which burns at 700 degrees.
It didn't melt. It lost its structural integrity.
You know,
that's why the building came down.
You know, the FBI actually paid for the bomb that went in the 1993 blast.
Well,
Sheikh Omar Abdul Rahman.
Well, I'm not sure that's actually correct.
Well, I'm going to give you a film so you can understand it.
If it's in a film, it must be true.
Well,
thank you.
Some people believe that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have a card?
No, I don't.
Oh,
but you can get me via my website.
Good afternoon, Milano Company.
Sorry, is this controlled demolitions?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I was wondering if there was someone I could talk to briefly, just to ask a question I had.
Well, what kind of question?
Well, I just wanted to know what a term meant in demolition terms.
Okay, what type of term?
Well, if you were in the demolition business and you said the term pull it, I was wondering what exactly that would mean.
Pull it?
Yeah.
Hold on a minute.
Thank you.
Sir?
Yes?
Pull it is when they actually pull it down.
Oh. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Bye.